It's time to stop being fake. That statement might be a little shocking to you because most of us would not consider ourselves fake at all. In fact, a lot of us might have even said in the past that we don't do fake, or even we can't stand fake people. A lot of us probably can relate to even thinking that, let alone saying it, myself included. But I wonder how many of us have actually taken the time to self-reflect and maybe evaluate and see if there's any amount of fakeness, if I could put it that way, within us. How many of us have even asked ourselves or considered whether or not we're not fake? I'm actually starting to think that more of us are more fake than we would like to admit. And to be honest, I've come to that conclusion about myself. And that's not to say that you're fake in order to be deceptive or evil. I know the word fake has a very negative connotation, and rightfully so, but I think when we finally allow ourselves to be completely honest and open to the possibility that we may be a little bit fake in our lives, that can really have a positive effect not only on your relationships, on your quality of life, but on your spiritual life as well. A lot of us are not going to be willing to admit that we're fake, even to some degree, but I can prove to you that you most likely are. Let me prove it to you this way. I want you to think about the last time that you were down and going through a really hard time. What was your response when the cashier, whether at the store or a restaurant, asked you, "How are you?" I can almost guarantee that your answer was, "I'm doing good, how are you?" You may not have been smiling, you may not have been super bubbly, or you may have been, depending on your personality type. But you weren't fine, but you still said that you were. Now, am I saying that you are a evil person for telling someone that you were okay when you weren't? No, we all do it. We don't want to bring someone down just because we're down. I totally get it, but that's still fake. Hopefully by now, you've been able to open up a little bit and become more willing to admit that, yeah, there are some areas of my life that I am a little fake. Not all the areas of your life that you are being fake in are necessarily bad, just like the example I just gave you. But there are other areas where it's really important not to be fake. So let's talk about that. And just a side note, I am not advocating that we just walk around and wear our heart on our sleeves and just let our emotions completely have total control of our lives. That's not what I'm saying at all. In fact, if we give in to our emotions and we are ran by emotions, our lives are going to end up miserable. So that's not what I'm saying at all. But I am saying this in order to try to help you and even myself to become more open to assess the areas of our lives that we're possibly a little fake in that could be damaging us. So fake, as defined by Webster, means not true, real, or genuine. In other words, inauthentic. And that's really what I'm getting at today. We can be so inauthentic. We live our lives so focused on pleasing everyone else that we forget to be who we really are. And God made us all different for a reason, because He has a calling on each one of our lives. And by me focusing on trying to please everybody else, I lose sight of pleasing God. So I want to challenge you to take some time within the next couple of days and really think about that. Really reflect on yourself and your relationships, your relationship with others, with friends, family, co-workers. How are you at work? If you go to school, how are you at school? How's your relationship with God? Are you one way at home, another way at work, and another way out with your friends? How authentic are you? How real are you? Honestly, do you pretend to be someone that you're not? Or do you pretend to have values that you don't, or interests that you don't, in order to be accepted? I think more of us do that than we care to admit. And today, I am admitting that. I've done it in my walk with God. I've felt burdens that I was too scared to pursue because I was too worried about what other people thought. And I allowed my prayer life to suffer because I didn't get the acknowledgement that I was craving for. And the Bible is so true when it tells us not to compare ourselves amongst ourselves. Because my calling is not your calling. Your calling is not my calling. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to be. Not only is it okay that it's like that, That's how it's supposed to be. God has a special place for each and every one of us in His kingdom. God has something for each and every one of us to do in His kingdom and for His purpose. And the whole purpose of this video today is to encourage you to find what that is, to seek that out. What is your purpose? What is your place in God's kingdom? Because you will not have any fulfillment and really the joy of the Lord. You won't get to experience the full joy of the Lord until you find that. A while back, and I haven't really shared this with anybody, but a while back, I had a very strong prayer life, and I'm rebuilding it now. But I had a very strong prayer life. I prayed. It was very strong. And God actually moved and used me. And I do believe it was because of that prayer. Prayer equals power. If you want to be powerful in the spirit, if you want to be powerful in the kingdom, you got to know the word, you got to get it in your heart, but you also need to spend as much time as you can in prayer. And I prayed a lot. I was using the gifts of the Spirit, and I'm not saying that in a proud way because I'm a tool, and it's up to God. It's up to the craftsman to decide which tool to use at which time, or at what time, I should say. But in that season, when I had my prayer life strong, I was deep in the Word, I was used. But because I cared too much about what people think, I was trying to please people, not please God. I cared too much about what they thought. And all the acknowledgement that I got, that was some. It wasn't minimal, but it wasn't excessive. So we did get some acknowledgement, but it was always for the hard work that we did. My husband and I did a lot of work at that church and a lot of manual labor, a lot of volunteering. We got acknowledged for that. I appreciate that. But I always wondered why I was never known as a person of prayer. Why was my spirituality not acknowledged? Why was my spirituality or my faith not acknowledged? So because I was comparing myself to others, I got discouraged. And I thought that, well, since they're not acknowledging how God is using me, it might just be all in my head. I'm probably just deceiving myself. I'm thinking I'm something when I'm or I'm thinking that God's using me in this certain way and He's really not, and it's really just in my head, and I'm just thinking too highly of myself, and I got discouraged. I was defeated, and I gave up. I thought God called me to be a prayer warrior. I thought God called me to be an intercessor, and I gave up because I wasn't acknowledged for it. But that wasn't their fault. That was mine. Because I was so focused on pleasing others, getting the recognition from others, that I lost sight of pleasing God. Sometimes people can have such a strong desire and need to belong and to fit in that it causes them to miss out on their calling. There could be people out there that are called to teach, but because it's not popular, because it's considered even boring to some, they feel pressured to not teach, but to try to preach. And if that's not your calling, you're going to have no witness of the Spirit. You're not going to have that anointing. You're not going to have that flow that you're desiring. You might get good at hyping people up and exhorting, but that's not preaching. What I'm trying to say is, if you're called to one area of ministry that's not as glamorous, if you want to put it that way, that's not as celebrated as another ministry, but you try to pursue a different ministry, you're not only going to be missing out on your calling and the blessing that God has for you through that calling, but you will also be affecting the church as a whole, because that's what all our gifts and callings are for, is to edify the church or to be used for the kingdom of God. So it's important to be authentic. It's important to be real. What are you passionate about? What subjects of the Bible are you passionate about? Don't miss out on your fulfillment that you can get from going with or submitting to or pursuing the calling that God has on your life. And not only can it affect, your calling in the church, that's on a greater scale, but what about on the opposite end of the spectrum here? It can also affect not the minimal things, but smaller things, smaller areas of your life, like your prayer. If your focus is to please others instead of God, you might be praying a different way. You might be praying in a way that you think others expect you to pray instead of just praying sincerely. Prayer is relationship. Prayer is communication with God. How do you communicate with God? I'm not going to talk to my husband a certain way just because my friend talks to her husband that way. That's their relationship. I have my relationship with my husband. So I'm going to talk to him the way that I talk to him. And being inauthentic can also affect your relationships, the people that you have influence over, because whether you realize it or not, we all have influence over somebody. We all have a circle of influence. It varies in size, from person to person, but we all have a circle of influence. What are you doing with it? And how authentic are you in it? It can also affect your relationships in that the people may never get the real you because you're so stuck on trying to please everybody. You're going to act the way that you think you need to act in order to be accepted by them instead of just being your real self. And at that point, do you really have friends? Do they really know you? That's worth considering. And I say all this because this is where I found myself. I always considered myself a very real person. And for those of us that know me, I'm pretty honest and I'm pretty direct. And that's something that I have had to work on and I'm still working on, because you can be right and wrong at the same time. You could be right in what you're saying, but wrong in your delivery. And that's something that I'm definitely working on, because I never mean to offend anybody. So I just always consider myself real. I'm just real. And that could be very polarizing. You could like me or not. So either way is fine with me. And that's how it was for a long time until recently. I experienced something that shook me, woke me up. And a lot of it had to do with content creation and the business that I was trying to start, which is why I shifted. If you didn't see the video from yesterday, that's why I transitioned, because I am passionate about life coaching, Christian life coaching. I am passionate about grief coaching because that's a huge need in our society that's not really being met, especially coming from someone that's experienced grief, that has experienced a great loss. And although I'm passionate about that, it still wasn't feel like it was aligning, but I felt pressure to continue in it because people were expecting me to. I came to the realization that this is my life. This is my life. This is the time that God has given me. These are the giftings that God has given me. And so what am I doing with it? So today I'm gonna stop being fake. I'm gonna stop being inauthentic to my calling and my purpose. I'm gonna stop trying to pursue someone else's calling and start pursuing my own. And I would encourage you to do the same, because once you do, you're gonna find such fulfillment. If you're a teacher, please teach for the kingdom. We need more teachers. If you're a singer, do it to the best of your ability. If you're a Sunday school teacher, do it to the best of your ability. That's our future generations you're helping. There is such a special calling for God's people, for each and every one of us. We are all called to minister, because that word minister means servant. We are all called to serve in some capacity. We're not all preachers, we're not all teachers, but there is a special place for you. And I want to encourage you to stop being fake, stop trying to be someone that you're not, stop trying to be somebody else, and be you. Be who God has called you to be. Pursue that. Find out what that is. Dig into the word, dig into prayer, and let God unfold that beautiful, special calling in your life.